IVM.
Hello and welcome to Simblified, our first long episode of the year. We had the year-end episode, but that doesn't count because Tony was on it. So this,
yes, don't count.
So this episode is, we are going to explore the galaxy with New Horizons, which NASA has recently thrust into the far reaches of the universe. And by recently, I mean 2006. It crossed Jupiter, I think, in 2010 or something. And recently, it's just crossed Pluto. In 2016, it crossed Pluto. And now it's crossed a faraway rock called Ultima Thule. So we are going to talk about that. We are going to talk about wise space exploration. And we are also going to make some very bad jokes along the way. All that on the other side of this enthralling, spaced out episode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another awesome week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please make sure that you do. We're IVM Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So we did this last week and we had a pretty good response and we'd like to keep it going. So if you are listening to an IVM podcast, take a screenshot of that, put it on your Instagram story and tag us with it. And what we'll do is we'll repost it on our story so that people get a look at what you're listening to. And people who come onto our stories will get an idea of what kind of things people are listening to. Leave us a comment too, just don't tag us. Last week, we launched 2 new shows. We launched our first Marathi podcast. It's called Golgappa, hosted by a regular on our network, Tripti Khamkar. Actress Shivani Tangsale is the first guest of the show, and she talks about baking, her Everest climbing experience, and her love for theater. And we also launched the Filter Coffee podcast, hosted by Karthik Nagarajan. On the first episode, Karthik talks to film editor Nishant Radhakrishnan about focus group screenings, OTT platforms, and the future of the Indian film industry. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus is joined by writer Devang Pathak. He talks about what drove him to start his own blog, What's That Funny, and why critiquing the Indian comedy scene is important. On their 100th episode, the Football Twaddle guys answered questions from listeners while twaddling about David De Gea's amazing performance. On the Kannada podcast Thalle Harate, the hosts discuss how AI and machine learning is influencing our lives today and its potential for the future. On Advertising is Dead, Anshulika Dubey, co-founder of Wishberry, talks to Varun about running a crowdfunding platform for creative projects in India. And with that, let's continue on with your shows.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Simplified. The show which is not so much about alternative facts as much as selective facts. We leave only things that we ourselves can understand in the vain hope that doing Wikipedia research and one Guardian article is more than what most people might do, lace it with a few jokes, and hopefully by the time you're done with this episode, you are a wee bit smarter about the issue that we are talking about.
Well said.
It's a fairly low standard, I know, but we are very realistic about it.
Yeah, I know. You are terrible researchers. We are just slightly bad.
Wow, don't put down our what are they? The MBA of Simplified listeners. Okay, today's random fact, which I have not asked either of you about, is what's the farthest you have been from home as a kid? Because we're talking about New Horizons, going far away from home and all that.
Well, the farthest away would probably classify as, I think, Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow. Wow, yeah. As a kid?
No, as a kid.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
no.
Unless you're still a child of the universe.
No, definitely not. Farthest away
I went
from
to Dubai
home
and I was living in
but
Bahrain
kid,
at the time.
how old do you define as kid?
I don't know, 16? 15?
15, 16. Oh, 15, 16.
In Chuck's case, actually 35 also.
Boom.
Away from, okay, again, a lot of dimensions to it. Away from home means away from parents?
Parents.
Away
Parents.
from parents.
Yeah. With or without their knowledge.
I don't know, man.
Okay, while you think about it, I'll tell you mine. Yeah.
If you say that train story, Kodaikanal again, I will hit you.
No, not So when we were kids, I used to live in Malad, right? And there was a creek
Okay,
there.
you've got your answer. Thanks, Malad. Yes.
And so I got into, so we were playing, and there were these fisher people in the creeks. They had these very nice looking dugout canoes, those black ones. So we asked those guys if they'd give us a round. And one guy said, okay. So we sat in the thing, and the creek waters are very still. Yeah. It's very silent. It's awesome. So the guy kept rowing and going around. And we didn't realize, so I was the only guy sitting there. He went right up to Warsaw. So people from Bombay would know. And he entered the sea. And then it started becoming choppy. And I was terrified. And this guy found my fear most hilarious. So after sort of enjoying my discomfiture for some time, he sort of deposited me on the on the side of the creek, which is, this is like Warsaw on one side and Mud Island on the other.
Wow.
So he dropped me on the Mud Island side, and from there I caught a bus, and I didn't have money for the ticket. So I basically, sort of my teary VP face, and the conductor gave me a free ride, and then I came. My parents had no clue at all.
Wonderful. Wow. Now they do after they listen to this episode.
My farthest was probably like school picnic in like Baroda or something.
Boring.
Yeah, because I did a lot of adventures within Ahmedabad where
let's not get into this.
I snuck away from parents and did many hilarious, interesting things. But
one of which you are allowed to say because your picnic was boring.
Yeah, one of which was that's a topic for another podcast. So.
All right, fair enough. Okay, in this episode, we're going to talk about something that went a long, long way away from home, arguably further than your escapade to Warsaw. We are going to talk about New Horizons, which has traveled 4 billion kilometers away from home, which is a fair...
Roughly in the same time it takes these days to get from Mala to
Warsaw. Yeah. You might think that this is some New Year resolution type nonsense, like New Horizon, what's my New Horizon for 2019 going to be? But no, it's the thing farthest removed from bullshit like that, and indeed farthest removed from all of humanity itself. So the TLDR is this. NASA and the Johns Hopkins University built a space probe called New Horizons, blasted it off in 2006 with a primary objective of observing Pluto, that planet / not a planet, please cancel depending on your point of view, which it did in 2016, which exceeded expectations in terms of the data it gathered and stuff like that.
So this went off in 2006.
2006. In 2016, it crossed Pluto. And that was all that they expected it to do, but it had enough momentum.
Juice,
it had, just like India after walloping Australia at Melbourne and winning the series, they had enough.
And Pluto is seriously far, right? It's
just like Australia. Yeah. Pluto is pretty far. We'll get into how far it is actually. And they had enough momentum to knock their kangaroo chaddis off in Sydney as well. And now it's gone even beyond that. And it's basically sent back pics of the farthest object ever visited by spacecraft, which is a rock in the Kuiper belt called Ultima Thule. Thule? Thule I'm saying because I'm from Bombay. And hopefully, unlike Sydney, rain will not play spoil sport this time. So I thought we'd just explore a little bit about the New Horizons, what it is, what powers it to go all the way. I've been very curious always about how do these things just keep going.
Just some basic, I think we should start with some basic planetary geography.
Yes.
If you were to put it that way. So, well, of course, there is the basic solar system, of which Pluto is no longer a planet, but just some random mass that's orbiting around
Pluto
the sun.
के बारे में कुछ
It's like Pluto Hindutva.
Pluto Hindutva.
So, it's like amazing. But yeah, so whether there are cows. But there's that the planet
classical solar system that
solar system that we have, the 9 minus 1 8 planets.
Yeah.
And once you go past that is where you encounter what is called the Kuiper belt.
Yeah. So I'm just going to explain how Vox explained it. Actually, they explained it beautifully. They held up a basketball and said, now assume that this is the sun. Okay, and then in that case, Pluto is the size of a bowling ball. Or there is Earth Earth versus Pluto. There is basketball and a golf ball.
Golf
ball. Sorry, bowling ball.
Okay.
And then he said, okay, now keep going back. Yeah, now outside the door. Now take a train and go to Washington. We're basically 50 miles away. So that's how far a golf ball needs to be from a basketball. That's a distance between 50 miles away. That's the distance from Pluto to
to scale.
On scale. It's a very, very far way away.
Yeah, no, so what I'm trying to...
And most of us are spoiled by those representations we've seen in science textbooks of everything in one little picture, right? And so Pluto's not just there. Pluto's like 1 gazillion miles away. Yeah.
And not then, gazillion, but...
Then after Pluto, what comes?
After Pluto is the Kuiper belt. Rather, so here's the thing. Pluto is part of the Kuiper belt. Actually, it's the largest body in the Kuiper belt. The Kuiper belt is like the asteroid belt except 20 times bigger.
So there is an asteroid belt also between Mars and Jupiter.
Mars and Venus.
Mars and Jupiter.
Jupiter.
Mars and Jupiter. Wow. Forgot my alphabet.
So there's an asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, and then one after Neptune.
Yeah.
Which Pluto is a part.
Hence, that's the part of the whole controversy. Oh, is it just one of the big asteroids or is it a planet? We won't get into that.
And then after the Kuiper belt comes
Oort cloud.
Excellent. What is said?
Cloud?
Camel in Gujarati cloud.
I don't know, but I'm guessing a Dutch guy was behind discovering it.
Of course.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I just was tickled by the name. And then beyond that is the Milky Way, and beyond that is Snickers. Okay. So now we go to a basic question: why science? Why space exploration in the first place? And that's a question as old as space exploration itself, right? In a world beset by things like poverty, climate change, migrant problems, a potential food crisis, there being no cows, the rampant use of auto-tune in pop music. So all these crisis problems are the space exploration seems like one of those things that's easy to criticize as being lavish, and that's because I think, and we actually had this insight when we did that episode on gravitational waves, a lot of the results or the benefit for humans are not immediate. You know, they come a lot later. It's like one of those things where you don't have a problem to solve as much as you try to discover new things to solve as a result of the exploration that you do. Like the analogy that's often used is, if we think about it this way, then what would we say a few centuries back when people just wanted to take ships and explore other lands? Because, that's the scale that was in their heads. When all these problems are there to solve over here, why you take the ship and going out to other lands? But look at the benefit.
When people ask these questions about why you're doing this, right? I mean, you look at the 500 million types of YouTube videos of how people are making of some random crap. Like there is a guy who is discovering ways of making machines which have knives that pop balloons. For some reason. I was just watching this one video and I was like, what is this? And so basically, when people ask questions of why this is being done, there's only one question that everyone needs to be asked. Why does a dog lick its balls? Because it can.
Wow.
Well
said, I guess. Anyway, space exploration is also sexy. And it draws a lot of kids to study science. So when JFK talked about the moon and why we are going there, what was that line he used? We are not going because it's easy, we are going because it's hard. That inspired a whole generation of kids, not just in the US, but everywhere around the world to take up science. And goodness knows that we could use a few more scientists and a few less investment bankers and hedge fund managers in this day and age. There is also
put them on rockets.
There is that angle, which is about space colonization and potential natural resources, which is, maybe a slightly easier sell to people if they're looking for immediate returns. I mean, Mars and what have you, and potentially unlimited energy sources beyond our planet Earth. And NASA also does a lot of other work, including environmental research. So all of this sort of answers the question. But I think the bigger thing is, without space programs, there'd be a lot of technologies that we use today, even on our phones, which would not be possible. Like GPS, for instance, was first used for space exploration. Other things like accurate weather prediction, solar cells, and things like that. In fact, and also, what do we do if another asteroid actually decides to collide into us? We need to understand how these things operate. Like Bruce Willis isn't going to be around forever.
Neither is Aerosmith.
Well played. So I'm actually going to... here's a list of technologies which have come as a result of space exploration, and I want you guys to try and guess what these technologies are. In the 1990s, a team of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory worked to create cameras small enough to fit on spacecraft and with scientific quality.
GoPro.
No. Just camera phones.
Oh, camera phones.
Just camera phones. Yeah. The Lewis Research Center attempted to develop diamond-hard coatings for aerospace systems, later creating a technique that was developed and patented just for that purpose. It's something that all three of us are using right now.
Cell phone.
No.
Glasses.
Yes, glasses. Scratch-resistant glasses, to be specific.
So Gorilla Glass, effectively.
Scratch-resistant eyeglasses.
Eyeglasses.
Yeah. A space program needs a pretty good digital image. The JPL, Jet Propulsion Lab, played a lead role in developing this particular technology, which in turn was used in hospitals. CAT scanners.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
This is very interesting. The athletic shoes, Nike Air Trainers wouldn't exist if it weren't for suit construction technology developed by NASA. It was a former NASA engineer that first pitched the idea.
So, I mean, I think I read this in Wings of Fire by APJ Abdul Kalam. What is it called? I forget the name of it. Carbon light or carbon something light or something it was called. Basically, it was this highly durable carbon fiber, so which is extremely light, and they had developed it for their space program, and then they used it to develop prosthetics for children, for children especially, because smaller children can't really pick up heavy prosthetics and move with them. So these were extremely light, and they were also extremely durable. So they were developed for the space program and then used in prosthetics.
So one of the things, like being in industry, is when you have for-profit and grant-based research.
Yeah.
So for-profit research is crippling sometimes because they have a time horizon.
Right.
And if you don't have deliverables, you are forced to abandon a lot of research.
Right.
So,
which could potentially be useful later.
Grant-based research, which is what this is. You basically allocate funds and you just see where it goes.
Where it goes,
leads to a lot of fundamental...
Yeah. This is also one of those arguments why the government should always be invested in science rather than purely industry. I mean, there are some other very interesting things. The portable computer, the computer mouse itself came about because in the 1960s, astronauts wanted a easier way to navigate computer screens. Artificial limbs, baby formula, freeze-dried food, obviously, wireless headsets, home insulation, ear thermometer. So the list basically goes on and on as you can see. There are even dust busters.
Yeah, so in fact, APJ Abdul Kalam was responsible for a lot of advancements that were non-space program related or non-missile related. The polymer materials, the carbon polymer materials are basically called carbon-carbon. And they were glass-filled polypropylene, which was used in missiles. And what they did was they reduced the weight of the calipers that children wore by 1/10 of their original weight. So, and then afterwards, also what he did was APJ Abdul Kalam was behind developing India's first low-cost cardiac stent.
Wow. So all this came as a result of
space exploration or like even propulsion technology or missile technology.
Amaze-Max, I would say.
Yeah.
So space exploration, we doff our collective hats to you.
Yeah.
Hats also might have been invented as a result of space exploration.
Who
knows?
Hair is flying, missile is flying.
Hey.
Let's put hat.
New Horizon might say that, I went, these guys might say, our spacecraft went 4 billion miles and all we got is this lousy photograph. But it's not that. That's not what it is.
Okay. Yeah. Coming back to Earth, to New Horizons. Firstly, why Pluto? One is because it's there theory of Pluto. Pluto has been a focus of NASA for quite a while, because I think the last planet the furthest planet that we explored, obviously has to be Neptune, which was in the late 1980s. So it's actually been a while since we've been trying to get to Pluto. And the only existing picture of Pluto that we have is literally a pixel. It's just a small dot.
This is literally only the fifth probe or fifth man which has left the solar system, isn't it? New Horizons.
I'm not even sure if it's the fifth.
Yeah. So there was one called Polaris 10. There's one called Polaris 11. But they were derelict when they left.
Okay.
Then there was Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. And curiously, Voyager 2 went little before Voyager 1. And
this is like Abbey Road and Let It Be album of Beatles. Severe
and
trivia.
after Voyager, which was in the 80s, as you said, 80s.
Yeah.
No, not 80s, 90s, I think.
1989 was, I think, when Neptune was. Anyway.
It's now that one guy has...
Voyager 2 has now escaped the solar system.
So there are only two then that have crossed the solar system.
So
all of these have crossed, but I think Voyager is still alive. Yeah.
They escape the solar system and then they enter interstellar space.
Wow. Oort cloud.
Exactly. No, it's past the Oort cloud.
Past the Oort cloud. Wow.
Oort is also inside.
It's still considered to be the
solar system.
Yeah.
Amazing. Maybe.
So Voyager 2 left what is called the heliosphere. It left the heliosphere on November 5th, 2018.
Wow, amazing. And on that note, let's take a little break and we will explore things on the other side.
Family businesses get a bad rap. At one time, they were looked down on for getting rich, for being too ambitious. Today, they're still looked down on, but for not being ambitious enough. Not agile enough, not modern enough, too traditional in their mindset. The biggest brands and business houses in the country started out as humble family businesses. It's the way India has done business. Join Sonu Bhasin in conversation with stalwarts of Indian family businesses on the Inheritors podcast series by Bloomberg Quint. Discuss the highs and lows, the needs and pressure points of building a business legacy that spans generation.
So welcome back. We are here going to talk about New Horizons, the spacecraft that has gone very, very far. Tell us more.
Yeah. Getting back to Pluto, we believed that our understanding of Pluto will help understand the origins of the universe a little better because the Kuiper belt still is considered like remnants of Big Bang or what origins of universe. A lot of those materials are still likely to be.
It's from that time.
Yeah, I mean, at least
when it was formless clouds of matter.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they're trying to test anyway. So they'll know this only when they go and take. And
these are basically failed planets. We have tried to get into IIT and got only into IIT.
We are living on basically a planet that went to Kota or something.
Merit list.
Anyway, so the more you explore these things, the more we know about where we come from and all that. And so the Kuiper belt is 30 to 50 astronomical units away from the sun. 30 at its shortest, 50 at its largest. If that seems short, sun to earth is 1 astronomical unit. So
of course.
Again, it's quite a while away. Like the asteroid belt, the Kuiper belt consists mainly of small bodies or remnants from when the solar system had formed. And many of these are primarily rock and metal. There is also jazz and classical somewhere else if you see. And there are many chemicals over here like methane, ammonia and water. At least that's what scientists believe right now. And there are 3 officially recognized dwarf planets. One of which is Pluto, one of which is Haumea, and the other is Milkshake. No, Make. Make, apparently.
Excellent.
Yeah. Some of the solar system's moons, such as Neptune's
these scientists have basically been like, nobody cares what these places are. Let's just name them whatever you want to.
And another Okay, anyway. So, now, what has New Horizons done? It has successfully... So, here's the interesting thing. New Horizons wasn't supposed to pass over Pluto so soon. But it got sort of like a gravity slingshot type of thing when it passed Jupiter. So it's actually reached 3 years before it was supposed to. Which is amazing. But also because it's moving at that speed, its fuel is running down, so it can't afford to expend fuel in order to slow down.
Oh wow!
So it's actually going at it's going at a damn fast clip. It's going at some 32,000 kilometers per second or something. It's going like pretty fast. Or was it hour? I'm guessing per hour.
No, it'll be
per second is about right. Yeah,
it's about right. Yeah. So this image this romantic notion that we have of a space probe just happily trundling along in space, singing a Genesis song as it goes. I think not exactly. It's a pretty damn fast thing.
Yeah.
So what it's done is it's taken a lot of images, it's captured a lot of data using a spectrometer, and is basically filled up a solid state hard drive with 20 GB of data. Great. Now, how does this data come back to Earth? And that's something I've always been fascinated about. Like, wow, what hotspot do you use, bro?
I know, yaar. Password dena.
So it turns out to be it's radio waves. So it sends microwaves back to the Earth, and on Earth there is a 200 meter diameter dish just to receive signals that come from New Horizons. It's amazing, right? It's 4 billion kilometers away and it's sending it back. But then that sort of distance also has its own problems, and the speeds are 1 kilobit per second.
Whoa.
So basically, that 20 GB of data that is just captured is going to take 18 months for it to transmit all of it back to planet Earth.
Wow.
And
I thought that downloading like a song in the dial-up days was an achievement.
This is apparently 50 times slower than dial-up. 1 kbps, right? And there's a latency time of 4 hours. So if Earth sends an instruction to there, it takes 4 hours for it to reach there. But still, that's pretty damn good. 4 hours. 4
hours is not bad,
there.
bro.
Yeah.
I mean, that's more...
in an ad agency, it takes longer.
Definitely.
We've seen a few... So what we have so far, I mean, the data is still coming, obviously. We have seen a lot of nice images for now, but obviously it's more than just pretty wallpapers for which we have shot of grand piano-sized probe into the deep end of space. In just 1 year with the limited data, what we have are basically, one, of course, the best photo of Pluto that we have, more than that pixelated blob that we had a while back, which itself has revealed a lot. It's told us a lot about the surface. It's told us a lot about the complexity of Pluto and its satellites. We've learned that there's a lot of activity on Pluto. Activity, not like New Year parties and weekender and things like that, but it's like Pluto might have had water in the past. And that obviously, is there life? Because the moment there is water, people start getting excited. We start understanding the origin of the planets and the asteroids, Pluto's moon. It has a 1,000-kilometer wide heart-shaped nitrogen glacier, which is now the largest known glacier in the solar system.
Wow.
Yeah.
Liquid frozen
that's
nitrogen.
amazing.
Frozen nitrogen, yeah. Pluto shows evidence of changes in atmospheric pressure and possibly past presence of running or standing liquid volatiles on the surface, which I'm guessing is something important because Wikipedia says so.
Volatiles, does that mean lava or water?
Yeah, liquid volatiles. I'm guessing that's something lava-ish.
No.
Something that explodes.
No.
Volatiles are which evaporate. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and there's something apparently that's been seen only on Earth, Mars, and Saturn's moon Titan. So now, if you are ever faced the quiz question, what is common to Earth, Mars, Pluto, and Titan? You liquid volatiles on its surface is your answer. It'll go nicely with microwaves from Micronesia.
Might as well play in the background.
And finally, Pluto's atmosphere is blue. And even NASA's website is like, who knew? Their website says, who knew? That's right, who knew? Other cool thing is, you know the rock band Queen.
Yeah, of course.
Do you know that their guitarist Brian May is actually a PhD in astrophysics?
Wow, I didn't know
and
that.
he is actually part of this mission.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, as
the New Horizons mission.
Yeah, New Horizons mission. Especially his interest lies especially in stereo imaging. And he also released a song for the whole mission to inspire the entire team. So it's called New Horizons Ultima Thule Mix.
Oh, wow.
It's a pretty nice song.
Amazing.
So you don't know this. It is actually one of those, this frequently tops list of, hey, did you know that this rock star is also
an astrophysicist?
Yeah, I mean, not an astrophysicist directly, but there are guys who are like proper lawyers and what have you. But Brian May, PhD
Richard
astrophysics
Feynman used to play the drum on a samba band.
Okay.
Excellent.
Seriously, yeah.
The guy who makes nuts and bolts in Vasai has a podcast.
Oh!
Yeah. And I've always been fascinated, but I always wondered how these space probes are powered. Like, I always assumed somewhere that it was solar powered or something, but apparently, like in the far reaches of the universe, how are you going to get solar power? So the answer is actually sort of nuclear. It's radio isotope thermoelectric generator.
Oh.
So it has basically, fittingly enough rather, plutonium inside as a fuel, which decays. So when it decays, heat is released. And then there are thermocouples, which is not the hottest couple at the prom, but the thermocouple, there's a battery of thermocouples around it, which converts this heat into electricity, and that electricity is what powers.
What is this effect called?
A Seebeck effect.
Well played,
yes.
And what is the opposite of Seebeck effect?
Beck-C.
No. Peltier effect. That's when you. So if you have a temperature difference,
got it.
Generate electricity. That's Seebeck effect. And if you have electricity and generate temperature difference, that's Peltier effect.
Amazing. Wow. We have learned so much on this episode. Anyway, the RTG, the radioisotope thermoelectric generator, provided 245.7 watts of power at launch, which was predicted to drop about 3.5 watts every year. So it's a very efficiently built machine. In fact, they've dropped a lot of things so that the probe is more energy efficient. So one of the problems that this thing faced when it crossed when it crossed Pluto, was the fact that it didn't have the camera did not have moving parts. So it was stationary. It was built in so that it could save on the weight, etc. So it had to expend energy to turn around and
otherwise it would be just taking black photographs.
Black photographs. So, because they didn't fit it with the technology where it could sort of be like a zoom lens or something.
So actually, this stuff is really interesting because a lot of stuff that gets launched into space is launched on really low low powered equipment, and because the amount required and the space constraints are so high. So like for example, when if you watch the movie Apollo 13, the Apollo mission that actually failed to reach the moon, but it was called the most successful failure ever. So because it failed to reach the moon, but they used the lunar probe to actually tug the crippled spacecraft back to Earth, and the astronauts survived. So the lunar probe did a re-entry inside Earth's atmosphere instead of going on the moon itself. But that particular one, because they lost power from a couple of fuel cells that leaked and exploded, they had only one functioning fuel cell. And so what was the problem? The problem that they faced on Earth, and there are a lot of Earth scientists who are doing drills, they're saying they have enough battery to probably power a radio for 10 minutes.
Whoa.
And they had that much power to come back to Earth.
Wow.
To do, and they were allowed probably 3 course corrections. The thrusters would do 3 course corrections, and they had to calculate which would be the most efficient way those 3 course corrections could lead to a favorable angle of re-entry.
Amazing. So, but you know which launch had the least amount of power when it was launched? UPA-1. Didn't work as well as I expected. So anyway, the website, NASA website, very apologetically talks about the plutonium decay and says it won't have enough power to decay to whatever into the 2030s. Like, you're talking about 2030s. Wow, that's still a long way to go, dudes. Like the world is still going to be around by then, no? Like the scientific, anyway.
I wouldn't know about Andheri West, but the world is,
Anyway, we'll end this episode with a little bit of trivia, actually, which I found. NASA sent this probe actually to a nearest star, and they found sprouts on the surface. It was called Alpha Centauri. Okay, we're getting into that. Okay.
Oh God.
So NASA scientists, they seem like nice people on the surface, but there's often a lot of fighting and siding with one of two extremes. This is called a filter Hubble.
That is terrible.
Well,
thanks.
Thanks. That is genuinely terrible, Chuck.
Thanks. One of the best space scientists started making utensils, and then he became a former South African cricket captain. So he became Kepler vessels.
Sheesh. That's so bad.
Thanks, Ra. Then in school, we always used to draw the galaxy, no? That's where the name came. It was hand-drawn Meda Galaxy.
Hand-drawn Meda. Oh. That is...
Why is NASA so difficult to get into?
Tell no.
Because it's opposite of Asan.
Oi.
that takes the cake, Naren.
I'm like attack mode.
That's it.
Yeah.
Drop the mic.
Anyway, in one rocket launch, they sang the hit 90s pop song Skater Boy every time. So they launched it from Cape Canaveral Levine.
Canaveral Levine. Oh my God.
Anyway, I'm stopping now. I'm serious.
Please do.
I'm serious.
Oh, gee.
Okay. And the only way to end this episode is by the moon of Jupiter, which is Io.
Io indeed.
Srike, this is your last experience. Hopefully, we have already done this once before.
Oh God.
In, IVM studio. So
live.
Say something.
I'm glad that these experiences will not be captured on a smartphone anymore.
So one thing is that
I will still experience them.
Yeah.
Shrike just had his wisdom teeth pulled and he was wincing from the pain, and now he's forgotten the pain because the pain of Chuck's jokes has
exceeded. That's
a good thing.
Okay. Definitely.
So here's to New Horizons. Hopefully you guys have learned a little bit more about space exploration, why it's important. And here's to Pluto, here's to Ultima Thule, here's to Brian May making more songs about the universe.
Here's a lovely picture. Actually, they're beautiful.
Remarkable pictures.
Pictures. So stay safe, stay spaced out, and stay simplified.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
भारतीय सिने इतिहास में महिलाओं की जगह तलाशता हमारा खास हिंदी पॉडकास्ट सिनेमाया। निर्देशिकाओं की फिल्मों, कहानियों और नजरिए को समझने की हमारी एक कोशिश। मैं हूं स्वाति बख्शी और मेरे साथ सुनिए सिनेमाया IVM पॉडकास्ट ऐप और ivmpodcast.com पर भी।
Have you gotten yourself a gym membership and shown up only a few times? Are long working hours cutting your fitness goals short? How about you change things a little? Even a small effort can make a big difference. And I'll tell you how and what exactly. Hi guys, I'm Coach Urmi, and on the Kinetic Living podcast, you can look forward to some interesting stories of people who have changed the way they look at fitness after their kinetic journeys. Episodes out every Wednesday on the IVM app, website, and anywhere you get your podcast from.